Top of the day to you all. Welcome once again to Module 6 of PD 5202, Curriculum Objectives. The last time we discussed online, we talked about the curriculum philosophy. Every subject curriculum must have its philosophy. In the same vein, every subject curriculum must have its objectives. Objectives are statements that describe the endpoints or desired outcomes of the curriculum, a unit, a lesson plan, or learning activity. Objectives are also the instructions or directions about what educators want the student to be able to do because of instruction. Examples abound. That various types of example. You get many of them in your book. For instance, after a lesson on the Pythagorean theorem, students should be able to correctly solve at least 8 out of 10 geometry problems using the theorem. After a lesson on living and non-living things, students should be able to list the characteristics of living and non-living things. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to differentiate between igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. After a lesson on the characteristics of triangles, students should be able to identify triangles by correctly choosing paper triangles out of a selection of other 2D shapes at least 8 out of 10 times. You could see the examples I gave. You have to be specific. And you must not include what you know your students would not be able to do at the end of the lesson. It is dangerous to do that. If, for instance, you want to teach them living things now, you start by telling them the characteristics of living things, characteristics of non-living things. If you know that at the end of that lesson, they should be able to list the characteristics of living and non-living things, don't add to it that they should be able to differentiate between living and non-living things. Teach them the characteristics first. It is when they know the characteristics of living things and non-living things, it is then they will be able to differentiate and be able to sort objects into living and non-living things. So if you now bring everything together, that they should be able to lead the characteristics of living and non-living things, differentiate between living and non-living things, they may not be able to differentiate if they are able to lead the characteristics. So what I'm saying in essence is that do not overload the objectives of your lesson or the curriculum. We now go to the second unit, which is components of learning objectives. What are the components of learning objectives? High quality learning objectives include 4 elements. What are they? The first one is what student will be able to do. I said the other time. What will your student be able to do at the end of the lesson, or at the end of the term, or at the end of the session? This must be included in the curriculum. How will this lesson enhance a student's education? Using strong, specific verbs. You will explain what skills your student will be able to exhibit and what level of knowledge they will attain. I hope you get that. Note that action words like write, draw, or present are not the skills you are assessing. Example, students will be able to identify triangle. Mark the word identify. Not know. Identify. Action verbs. Make use of what? action verbs. The second one, how students will demonstrate their learning. If someone were to walk into your classroom, how could they say that students are learning? How? Use specific actions here, such as write an introductory paragraph that are different from the skills you are assessing. Examples: students will be able to identify triangle by choosing paper triangles. By doing what? Paper triangles out of a selection of other 2D shapes. That's how students will demonstrate their learning. When you identify, fine. Not identifying alone. You should be able to select. By the time they pack both 2D, all the shapes in 2D together. So you should be able to pick the ones that are triangular in nature. The other one, context for learning. What will your lesson provide that student can build from? In other words, you should describe the context in which students will be able to demonstrate what they have learned. I've given the example up there. After a lesson on the characteristics of triangles, students will be able to identify triangles by choosing paper triangles out of a selection of other 2D shapes. The last one there, the criteria for achieving proficiency. How will you know that a student has met their objective? How will you know that the set objective, you as a teacher, the objective you set, you expected your student to have achieved at the end of the lesson or at the end of the term? How will you know that they have achieved the objective? I said include specific criteria that will indicate how well a student has grasped a skill or concept. You have to state it in the curriculum, subject curriculum. Evaluation. Every subject curriculum has evaluation section whereby it will be stated how students will be evaluated in order to know whether the set objectives have been achieved or not. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of discussion on Module 6. Until we meet next time to discuss Module 7, do have a great day.